brought on Dave, and David Carroll responded to me and said the natural. So I'm curious. I may have to start referring to you, Jeff Styles. There you are, as the natural.
The natural.
The natural. That's what David Carroll said. He's the natural. He's a natural. As I guess he's referring to your skill as a talk radio host.
Didn't that movie end real poorly for Robert Redford?
Yeah, you don't look good, man. It's not great.
I was thinking.
No. I think he ended up doing okay.
Did he? All right. I was thinking that either Glenn Close or Kim Basinger took him down.
They tried.
I guess it was a bad way to go. I don't know.
They tried.
It all started with a lightning strike.
Back in the day.
I carved a great big microphone out of it.
Well, okay, so let's do this because I've already promised your agent, your handler, your manager. We are not your better half.
Yes.
We're not going to do tons of politics. I want to talk radio because you celebrated 28 years this week. I think we've covered how you kind of got into it, but I don't think I've asked this. Why did you go into radio and the talk side of it, and not the music side only? Because I know you've got we're going to talk about your podcast in a minute too. You love music as much as talk.
Oh yeah. I love music. It's at the core of my life. It's at the center of my life. It was by happenstance. I left radio after a long, slog through pretty much every department and genre, and went into advertising and was in between gigs. And talk radio had just started. It had just really begun in 92. It was August 3rd, 1992 when I went on the air. And I have told this story, and it was very, very true. I was in Knoxville. I had been in an ad agency, was copywriting, and had a knack for being creative and doing creative copyright. And won a bunch of addies and a couple of best of shows here in town. Chased a paycheck up to Knoxville and was very unhappy up there. And ended up departing from the agency that had hired me and was looking for another gig. And Max Hackett, the late, great Max Hackett, who was very, very good, who was there kind of at ground zero when Rush took off, when Rush Limbaugh began his ascent, the same time that CNN really took off during the first Gulf War, and America became the news junkie nation that it became when the 24/7, 365 news cycle began. Max was there here in town and sort of rose with that. And then he basically took off one day. He just kind of walked out, and it was kind of mysterious, and just had some sort of tiff with management. And 3 people called me that day. And one of them, a former coworker, and you know him real well. I'm not going to name names here. And the other 2, well, you actually know all 3 of them. But one said these words. The other 2 paraphrased it. But this guy said these exact words. He said, "Man, they're looking for a liberal, opinionated asshole, and I thought of you." I said the other 2 kind of beat around the bush, but that was it. That was the quote. And I said, all right, I'll go check it out. And came down and interviewed for the gig with Bill Lockhart. Had never met him before and got it. And lo and behold, I was on talk radio within just a few days, really.
I'll be honest with you. I can't believe that's not been a T-shirt yet.
Liberal, opinionated asshole, and I thought of you.
You should give that out as Christmas gifts.
I will tell you who one of the other ones was Dancing Dorothy, and she was calling me from the front desk, going, "Boy, you better get down here. This job was made for you." And I mean, seriously. And so I came down, and I mean, it was a whirlwind. I didn't even know who Rush Limbaugh was. I'm serious. I took the gig kind of like I moved to Chattanooga. I thought I'd be here for maybe 6 months. I wanted to hang glide, then I was going to move on. I was going to take the gig for the paycheck. I didn't even know what it was all about for maybe 6 months. And then I was going to find me another creative copywriting job or something in advertising and move on. Probably move to another town. I didn't like Knoxville. And the next thing you know, I'm on C-SPAN on election day, broadcasting to a global audience. I mean, within just a few months, it was insane.
But once you got into it, once you jumped into the water, did you kind of I know you said you thought you might move on, but were you kind of immediately like, no, this is it. I love this.
No.
Good. Next question.
The first day it was horrible. I cannot believe they even kept me. It was god awful, truly. And Max was still in the building, and there were people who were definitely going, what are you doing? Hire him back, put him back on. I promise you, that's the truth. It was, I really had no clue. And I actually came in, see, here you go, Clint. I had planned, I had done show prep, and I came in with a topic, and it failed miserably. And it took me about a week and a half to just get comfortable with the idea of just coming in and talking. And
so wait a minute.
once I
Did you plan? Yeah. Did you plan?
Yes,
Because planning is for
yes,
dullars, I heard.
boom, yeah. And the first topic, it was going to be about freedom of speech. Imagine that. And it was actually about. Do you remember Ice-T and his band? It was called Body Count.
Yeah.
And the album was called Cop Killer.
Yep. Oh, I remember
It was
that.
controversial thing, and that was what I was going for, was try to get this thing stirred up about freedom of speech, and was this really that big a deal? And oh my God, it's not what anybody wanted to talk about. So the idea of coming in with monolithic topics, I had sound bites and stuff. It not for me, not for me. So it took a while. By the time we got to actually the election cycle, I had gotten used to the idea of just being me and going with the flow. It didn't take long. And hey, I talked trash. I did it up until then for no money. I could definitely figure out how to talk smack for money.
Well, yeah, I'll tell you something that's funny. I mean, it's odd for people to picture, at least it was for me, because before I started working with you back in the mid 90s, I'd been listening to you, but to hear that you were a salesperson at some point in time makes me giggle without even hearing a story. I'm not saying you weren't good at it. I just can't picture you as a sales guy.
I can't either, really. I mean, beforehand, it seemed really out of character for me. It seemed like a real far-fetched idea. Looking back on it, it even seems more so, but I really didn't do that poorly. I actually made pretty good money. I hit my goals, and it was all about the secret was getting the right list.
Oh,
if
yeah.
it involved bars, concerts, fly by night, if it involved cash up front,
You're done.
if it involved piles of cash in a hotel room with a pistol on top, those were my people. That was when somebody like a sweet little Ann Esslinger, God bless her, she didn't want to work those accounts. I love those accounts. Give me those people with gold chains.
I had to go on a lunch break one time to Diamonds and Lace.
Now, Paul Gray was my man. Me and Paul Gray hung, man.
Dude, it was one of those. There was nobody there. They were practicing, and I was like, I just need my money, and I'm going to carry it out like this. I will never forget. There was a bar in Northgate in the late '90s, and nobody wanted to go call on him, and I went and called him, and it was a giant, big old guy, great guy. Ended up being a really good client, and it wasn't Cheers. I can't remember the name of it. But we ended up they did business for 6 months, but I'll never forget. I showed him the proposal and he told me, bring me something big. I'm going to knock it out. I said, okay. And it was like, my big package, like $4,000 a month. Well, he said yes to it like that. He said, how do you bill me? How do you invoice me? I said, well, we'll get you running. They'll invoice you at the end of the month. You like to pay in 30 days at 90 days. He goes like this. I kid you not. He had 2 pockets. He had 2 envelopes. One with enough money to pay it cash right there. The other was cash that I guess he couldn't pay me out of. But I thought, I'm going to love this guy. I'm going to get paid immediately.
That's my list, man. You're talking about it. I'm serious. That's how I got involved with Ashley Capp and the concert business in the beginning. That's how I made so many of those contacts, because when it was the night of the show, whatever the show was, you had to get to the promoter and get your money that night.
Yep.
And so I got on the floor of a lot of great shows. Saw a lot of great, bands when they were warm-up bands for other bands, while I was trying to find the guy before he could get out of town, success or not a success. It didn't make any difference. But yeah, Paul was my jam, man. And I mean, I tell you what, people like that, I didn't have any issue with it. The Bad Man contest. You remember the Bad Man contest,
Oh, yeah.
Our man Danimal, who, went down there and got in those things. those people were gold to me. I love dealing with them. And Paul in particular, his word was as good as anything in this world. He told you, be there. This is the amount of money. It made other people nervous. It was put it in the bank.
Well,
And
those folks were used to doing business that way. They had dealt
yeah,
with all vendors that way. So that was
and
their
then
world.
get a shot at tequila and a lap dance and then going about your business. I
Do
like
you
that.
do you think being a salesperson for a time helped you when you started getting on the other side after you really got ingrained as, okay, I am a talk radio host? You were still having to deal with salespeople all the time.
Sure. It let me see that into the business. I mean, I could actually relate. This. Sales is tough. It's a very hard job. I could not have done it any longer than I did. I was going to stop doing sales one way or the other. I could either do it on my own terms or they were going to stop me because I couldn't live in that world much longer. My propensity for being brutally honest would have caught up with me at some point. And I'm not saying that you have to lie. I'm just saying you do have to quibble sometimes and fudge sometimes, and it just didn't work well with me. And that was an easier time, so I understand how difficult it is. And so yeah, it let me relate. It let me empathize. I think to a large degree, and it also let me know what I didn't want to do.
Yeah.
And that's an important lesson in life. Figure out what you don't want to do, so you don't waste any more time.
Do you remember the first interview you had or conversation you had with somebody where you kind of, I'm not saying you were nervous necessarily, but you were like, that's a big interview. That's an interview that kind of even, you want it and they say yes to it. And you're like, wow, I got that interview. Do you remember one like that?
Oh, I remember a lot that I was pumped up about, nervous.
Like your first big interview that you got, somebody you wanted, that you like, okay, I want this interview.
I Philippe Philippe Cousteau, all the Michael Cousteau, the Cousteau kids early on, a lot of those big conservation folks, some of the astronauts. I can tell you without a doubt. I mean, I can tell you right now the most important day ever to me was Veterans Day, and it was. I had 1 hour in my 2 hour show, Fred the Show, and I spent 1 hour talking to Desmond Doss and 1 hour talking to Charles Coolidge.
I
Charles
remember.
Coolidge just celebrated his 99th, and
Yeah.
that was the single brightest moment, in, as far as I'm concerned, in my talk radio career. Um, that was it. But I mean, I got to talk to my heroes like John Glenn, musicians, just out the wazoo, people that I admire. Peter Frampton. How many people get to hang out with Peter Frampton for 2 hours and talk to him? But nervous? No. I remember when Bill Frist came in, and I was his first major interview. The Senate had not had a doctor since I think the original founding fathers. And Bill Frist came in, and I was his first major media interview. He was shaking like a leaf. I had to calm him down to do the interview. And he goes on to the Senate, and this guy's, a leader of men, does bypass heart surgeries, and I had to talk him off the ledge. So I mean, no, not nervous, but I mean, I would get very excited about certain things. Yeah.
I had a good conversation today with a mutual friend of ours, and I do a podcast with him. And then I want to say hi to some people that have taken the time out to comment over here, because
Sure.
I like to say thank you when people engage. But so Dawson Wheeler used to own Rock Creek Outfitters. I was talking to him, and we talk pretty much every day, and we do a dayfirepodcast.com. And I said, hey, tonight I got Styles coming on. We're going to talk about, he's been a talk radio host for this long. And he goes, I'll never forget. He goes, Jeff tried to get me on the radio for years, and I was his account rep. He goes, but Jeff would reach out to me because, outdoor adventure and stuff. He goes, and I wouldn't do it because I don't know why. I just was nervous. He goes, and I finally did it, and I think you'll take this the right way. He goes, I'm listening to Jeff talk, and I finally relaxed because I thought, well, nobody knows if he's lying out of his ass or not. So if you can just say whatever you want, then I'm totally okay. He goes, man, after that, I was all in.
See, it took him that long to figure out the secret. No, I actually, through Dawson and Rock Creek, I got to interview some of my heroes, Got a chance to talk to Alex Honnold, the guy that, did Free Solo before he did it. I've got to talk to some of the greatest paddlers in the world. My God, the guy that actually did, the incredible rapids where the White Nile goes into the Congo, and just remarkable people who've done remarkable things. And I mean, I look at them and they're giants on this planet. They do things that nobody else could do or should do. And to be able to sit in a room with them is like some, duffer around here, or somebody who goes out and, weekend warrior plays golf, being able to hang out with Tiger Woods for a day.
I do. I'll have these conversations with him because we've been doing the podcast for over a year now. And a lot of the folks we bring in, I can relate to because I'm a weekend warrior type, guy. I like chasing waterfalls. I've camped and hiked, but nothing to the extent of what Dawson has done or even you have done. But we'll be in these interviews sometimes, especially if they're in the studio interviews, which we just kind of started doing back. But I'll be in there with people that have done big, giant things like you are talking about. I mean, big stuff. And they'll start talking in this outdoor lingo. They got their own language. And then both the guest and Dawson will look at me like I'm the third grader that's lost in the parking lot and go, now, Clint, a 16er means that it's a 16,000 foot. And I'm like, I got it now. I've been doing this for years. Stop looking down at me, damn it.
Yeah, go when we get through here. By the way, I want to tell you something.
Yeah.
This afternoon when I came in, I was killing time. After I went to go vote, I voted in the Republican primary, I'll have you know. And came in and I watched that movie you're always talking about, The Fifth Wave. And I was just sitting there and watching TV and just kind of just going through some stuff. And since I watched that, I'm going to ask you to watch something. When you get some time to yourself tonight, just look up YouTube and look up the Inga Rapids, INGA, the Inga Rapids. There's only one group of people that have ever actually gotten through these rapids and lived. And I got a chance to talk to the party that did that. And when you see what they did, you'll understand how awed I was to be able to talk to these people. And they came to the Lookout. The guy that was the leader came to the Lookout Wild Film Festival a couple of years ago. And he actually spoke and he walked to the microphone. The first thing he said, he looked at everybody. He goes, the answer is no. Nobody had said anything. He goes, no, I wouldn't do it again. So
that's a great way.
He's badass. Let me tell you. So anyway, go ahead, please.
I was going to say hi to Terry Mull. Janine said, liberal opinionated asshole. That's funny. Ron Hall said, and I was the person that Clinton Gore sent to the show that morning. And then Chris Clayton said, greetings from the sports guys. So there we go.
Hey, I just want to say thank you. The 28th anniversary, think about that. Off-kilter year. It really was just kind of a happenstance thing. I thought about it being my anniversary, my radioversary, as Rebecca called it. She put it on Facebook and grabbed some old pictures, and then the radio station did as well. And I am so humbled and grateful that so many people just jumped on there and made comments. It really, I was stunned and surprised. There was no buildup. Who builds up for a 28th anniversary? I'd like to think I might be Triple X one day. I could be Xander Cage, Triple X, but there's no guarantee I'm making another 2 years. Who knows? So, I mean, it was really nice. I mean, we had almost like, when I looked yesterday, I guess somebody pulled it up. You know me, I don't look at Facebook very often, but there were like 400 comments on there. And there were so many names from way back. I mean, all the way back. And these people I haven't heard from had a chance to think about forever. And it was wonderful. Thank you. Let me just say thank you to all those people that did that. That just made me feel great. Thank you.
That's good. And, it's as you get older, you start reflecting on things. And the people that were in the 50s and the 60s, my parents, they had the voice, the local and the national voices of their generations, right? Mm-hmm. So when I grew up, I would always hang out with my grandfather in his truck. I was his runaround buddy, and he listened to nothing but Luther on the radio. That's who he listened to. I grew up listening to Luther via my grandfather. And as we kind of get older, we establish we hear our own voices, that the narrator of our time that we kind of start getting to. And that, I think you're in that category of, as the generations moved for the last 15, 20 years, especially here in Chattanooga, people kind of, their life, when they talk about it, you're one of the voices that are behind some of the bigger events that they've had to experience. When 9/11 happens, people go to their radios. Of course, they run to their TVs, but they're also on their radios all the time when
You know
things
what?
are happening.
Do you want to you want to do a little experiment here?
Sure.
Talking about show prep.
Did you
Rebecca
show
walked
prep?
in. Rebecca walked in there a second ago. She goes, "Are you making notes?" And actually, I just started writing right before I walked in here, and I just started writing the things just right off the top of my head that have happened. The big things since I've been on the air. You want to give me about 60 seconds?
This is everybody wants to hear you, not me.
I will run through them as fast as I can, and just this is the stuff that we have talked about as encapsulated as I could get it, and just see how many click off in your memory if you've been listening. Maybe my voice is the one you heard talking about it first. I don't know. The original Gulf War, the rise of Rush, CNN, the whole global economy thing, NAFTA, China, most favored nation trade status, the militia movement, Oklahoma City bombing, Columbine, the Bosnian genocide, the whole blue helmet, one world order, Monica Lewinsky, LA riots, Waco, Ruby Ridge, the rise of grunge, Lollapalooza, Y2K, 9/11, terrorism, Iraq, Afghanistan, Al Qaeda, bin Laden, the tsunami, the Christmas tsunami 2004, U.S. recession 2008, Hurricane Katrina, the election of Obama, the Pope John Paul dying, succeeded by Benedict, succeeded by Francis, the death of Jerry Garcia, Frank Zappa, Kurt Cobain, James Brown, the Vols winning a championship, the Braves winning a championship, the Cubs winning a championship, Occupy Wall Street, Black Lives Matter, the 2016 election, the Haiti earthquake, Sandy, hurricane, Boston Marathon bombing, shootings in Orlando, El Paso, Vegas, Aurora, Colorado, Parkland, Florida, Sandy Hook, Charleston, same-sex marriage, legal pot, the royal family, the Me Too movement. What else?
I've got a couple. I've been making a list since you've been talking.
I mean,
That's amazing.
That was as she said. You need to come in here, honey.
Well, but here's where I think the strength of talk radio, and we're going to move in a little bit, because I think podcast, if it's really going to have success, that I think it is having and will have, owes a lot of that to talk radio format. But it's not just the big things; it's the daily things when the world's quote normal, and I'm just going to work and I'm picking up the kids, and I hear Jeff, or I hear insert your talk radio host here voice into my. It's part of my running diatribe. I talk back to it. We used to say this all the time, and I love music formats, but I never pulled over before going through a tunnel because I might miss something. I know what Sweet Home Alabama sounds like.
In a song.
Yeah.
The 1 foot in, 1 foot out test when you're in the parking lot and you have an appointment.
Yeah.
And you got the 1 foot in and 1 foot out because you really want to hear what's about to be said next. You want to hear the resolution of that conversation. Somebody's trying to get to that wrap up point. What's he gonna say? It. Yeah, you know exactly how the stairway to heaven ends.
Yes, and I can listen to it. Yeah,
exactly.
But I don't know how Jeff is politely going to tell this guy or girl to shut the hell up, and I don't know what they're going to respond over a certain topic.
Yeah, it won't be politely. That would be the big surprise, I think.
Well, I think I'm glad, and I hope you got another couple years on you. But I am a big believer. As we've had a number of local media folks the last few years leave us and pass away, and I think it's more important now than ever to acknowledge that what you do. A lot of people think they could do. I hate to tell people this. You can't. 20-something hours, 15-something hours, 10 hours of talk radio a week. And at one point in time when you were at your most, you were doing 25 a week, were you not?
I was doing 5 a day, 5 times a day. I think your math,
25.
Your ciphering.
Easter Ridge, baby.
Yeah. Your ciphering's pretty good there, Jethro.
Thank you very much.
A lot. I know that'll wear you down. I know it doesn't seem like it's not digging a ditch in the heat. I understand that. It's not shingling a roof.
Did it wear you
But
down?
yeah, it does. I went to see a very good friend of mine who happens to be a doctor at one point, and I guess I was dealing with, just stress related depression. This a long time ago, and I didn't really know what it was. I'm a pretty happy go lucky guy, and he was pointing out that that could possibly be one of the things I was dealing with. And me, I had ways of blowing off steam. Not all of them were healthy. And he goes, "Man, you're in a 5 hour boxing match every day. You're literally your body is geared up for a fight. You're in a fight every day of your life." And really, when you start looking at it physically, that is true. I mean, we do a lot of laughing and joking and cutting up that relieves the tension. But every single time you go to the phone or you have a guest in, you've got endorphins and all the rest of these little hormones going through your body, and you have that fight, flee, or what thing going on inside your body, and you're ready to respond. And those, as we refer to them, head explosions. Sometimes those things are exaggerated. Sometimes they're very real because and it's usually when you're surprised, when somebody kind of finds that chink in your armor, and you're just doing your job, and all of a sudden somebody surprises you, and you just okay, that's a lot of stuff going through your system, you know. And yeah, it you do that for a while, and it begins to put some wear and tear on you. Sure, it does. Imagine just your busiest and most stressful day at work, where you've been screaming at your coworkers and screaming at your boss and screaming at clients. Well, that's pretty much what you're doing every day. Sometimes.
Well, and two, I don't think people understand. It's not just everybody goes, "Oh, I could probably do that." They're just talking and giving opinions. That's fine. But if right now, and I do this in seminars, if I stop talking or you stop talking and we just do this,
Dead air.
that weight gets really heavy, really freaking
Real
fast.
quick.
Well, and
And
everybody looks to you when that happens.
yeah, well, yeah, they sure do. And let me clarify to that screaming thing. We've talked about this before. You've been in the same workspace and workplace that I have, and it's real important when I say that screaming. That's when screaming between friends too. When you go, "All right, are we good? Cool," and you go on. I'm
Yeah.
not talking about some sort of real horrible end of the world match. I'm just saying heated. It could be like over, the last night's baseball game, but you're into it. You're passionate about it. Are we cool? Good, and you go on. Still, you get those juices going, right? But yeah, and it is. I didn't ever ask for anybody to say Jeff Styles in the morning, or the Jeff Styles station or anything like that. It just kind of, when you're the morning guy, that's the way they do it. And so when everybody's down, when it does happen, people cycle up and down, and sometimes they down together. You got four people in there who got the blues, and guess who they look to?
You.
Everybody's kind of looking like Eeyore, you know. Everybody's uncaffeinated and just kind of just feeling mopey, and there's not really anything to talk about. Well, somebody's got to sling the thing on their back and start making something happen,
But I think that's, and I would assume you appreciate though when people are professional, because it would be easy to mail it in. If I'm just the co-host or if I'm just the engineer and I've had a bad morning or I'm not into it today, Jeff's the one that's supposed to drive this anyway. But when you have a good co-host or a good engineer that's a professional, that is invaluable.
It's everything. You just got to have people. It's very simple. It is easy to mail it in from time to time. You can't do it day after day. People's BS detectors are very big and very sensitive, and they will know. Um, you just got to get people around you who are not scared of being themselves. That's the
Yeah.
main thing. If you have somebody on there who is posing and trying to be somebody that they're not, people will pick up on that immediately. You cannot shore that up for very long. And so you got to have people who can just start talking essentially about nothing. You have to have a couple of individuals who are their own separate little Seinfeld show, and they can just talk about nothing for a certain period of time and make it somewhat entertaining. I mentioned Max already once, and let me mention him again.
That's a name I
I
hadn't heard in a long time, by the way.
I actually listened to him. I'm talking about, I knew nothing about talk radio. I listened to him one time when they started moving over to talk from an adult contemporary music format. And I am serious. He took the first 7 or 8 minutes of the show. I'm listening to the radio, and all he was doing was getting his studio set up. He goes, I'm going to put this over there. Let me get this over here. I get this mic set up here. Where's my drink and everything like this? He was doing nothing except setting up the studio, and there was music, bumper music playing in the background, and I listened to every word of it. And it was just because he was comfortable, and he was humming along with the music, and there was something that was just relaxing about it. It was like Mr. Rogers coming in and taking off his jacket and putting on the cardigan. And I knew he was going to start talking about something at some point, but I was totally cool with what he was doing. I was going, well, that's not at all what I expected. And I was tuning in to see what he did. And it was interesting to me. It really was. And I think the real magic of this format, and I think I could see it very much in the people who responded on Facebook and knowing how long they'd listened. And the magic is that people truly feel like they know you. And that goes back to being honest. People feel like they know me. They know my kids, my family, my stories, my hometown. And when I meet people for the first time, they feel like it's not the first time. And they feel for me when I'm down. If I lose a family member, they grieve with me. And they cheer for me when good things happen. And it's a family. It's a family. If people can say that they're Facebook friends and their online buddies are their buddies, and by God, talk radio fans can be family. The people who call in, and they're a group. They're a tribe.
When that started happening, when people started recognizing you out, and they Jeff, and you don't know who they are, but you're Jeff to them. You're the guy that gets them to work every day or gives them that break. When that started happening, was that hard to get used to, or did it never really bother you? Has it always come easy? Because I can imagine that gets a little hard at times.
It was weird. I mean, it was really weird at first, and it still can be. At times it can be a little spooky. I mean, depending on the person and their approach and where you are. I mean, it's cool. I mean, it's neat. I mean, people are just friendly. I've made a big issue of the fact if you're trying to listen to a band, and that's a big one for me. If you're at a concert and you're literally standing there trying to listen to a band, don't come up and broach gun control or abortion and start trying to do a talk radio show. I mean, when you're out and about, and I've had people literally pull up chairs at a restaurant and join us at a table with me and my wife and stuff. And that's a bit much. Just like you'd see somebody else and, hey, do a good show, throw a peace sign or something like that. That's wonderful. And if it's a time to talk, then that's wonderful. But sometimes, that you get the look, and people listen either because they like you or they don't.
Right.
If you're lukewarm, they're not paying any attention to you. They either like you or they really don't. And it's the ones that don't, you do have to kind of be on your toes. Some people can get pretty obsessive, and you got to keep that in mind. And I don't have some John Lennon complex. I'm saying there are some crazy nutcases out there, and you do have to keep that in mind. So
we did when we used to do remotes, and it was for everybody. But we had all these big personalities, and my job as the salesperson a lot of times was to escort guests on and off, because you would still bring in guests, but a lot of times I could always tell because there'd be this person like this looking, and they'd be like, "Hey, can I talk to Jeff?" Or can I talk to Scott or whoever? And I'd be like, they're going to be on a break in a minute. And he goes, well, I just want to tell him. I'm like, there's no reason to tell me all. He's only going to give a damn because you listen to him all the time. And they would show up at every remote, and I loved it because that's what made this. That's why people love the format.
And again, and if when you've got the headset on and you're talking, you're on the air. And somebody comes up and they see you and they're talking to you. You can't hear what they're saying, but they're in your face looming and they're saying something to you, and you're on the air trying to do your show, and you're trying so hard not to be rude. But, at some point you have to be rude. And at some point when they're talking to you and the band's playing that you've paid to see, you have to be rude. And then it's like, Jeff Stossy's an ass. He's such a dick. It's just it's bound to happen.
I got two or three more questions for you, but I'll tell you one of the funniest things I ever saw, and one of the best people ever that handled this was Dr. B. And I was at a remote with him, and we were giving each other grief before the remote. And sure enough, one of the people that comes to every remote and never got the hint that when these things are on and they're talking into the mic, that's a good time to leave them alone. Well, he kept trying to circumnavigate me and was talking. And finally, I was doing something, and I looked over, and he's standing about 3 feet from Gary, and he's, hey, I don't know about the Braves. And Gary, I swear to God, Gary just goes this. He takes the headset off and hands it to him. He hands him the headset and motions for them to sit down. And the guy's eyes got real big. And he goes, oh, you're not going to get on their air? He goes, no. I said, give me the headset back. But he handed him the headset. He was willing to walk away. I said, were you going to walk away? He goes, I was going to go get some pizza and a Coke, man.
That could make good radio.
That would have made some great radio.
It could make good radio. Hey, that's the way some people have lost their jobs too. You know, that's the way the Grease Man started. The first DJ that ever make over $1 million a year in this country was, like Dr. B, a listener who became a regular caller, and it got to the old, do you think you could do a better job? And they said, oh yes, I think I could, and ended up taking the guy's job. So be careful with that, you know.
You've had some good guests on in the past, and we've had this conversation, but there are some people who you think are going to be just great conversations that you get about 30 seconds into it, and you start looking at the clock immediately. You're like, oh my God, I got another 11 minutes with this guy or girl. And it's harder to have a conversation than people think, an intentional conversation.
It's the worst when you have a really smart person who ponders a lot. You've already touched on the dead air thing.
You mean this guy or girl, this one?
I have had, you know how many people, I've had people on the air who will sit there and look and nod. They'll go, all right, for the radio audience, let it be known that, let the record show that the guest is nodding. It appears to be nodding in approval. I don't think there are any flies in the studio. Yeah, you're on the radio, dude. Come on now. You got to sit. And I have just sat there and just let the silence just get so pregnant and go, dead air. Say something. You're on the radio. You're here on the radio. Yeah, you can hit a commercial. They're supposed to go another break. I said, are we through? Why doesn't your organization send somebody down who wants to talk?
About it.
And the worst ever was after I mentioned the Braves winning the championship was after the worst of first season. You know, Sid Bream coming around third. Braves win, Braves win, Braves win, Braves win. And they send in Francisco Cabrera and Rafael Belliard to the studio. The Francisco Cabrera, the hit. And it's this most exciting time in Braves history. Neither one of them speak a word of English. Not one.
You know they did that on purpose.
And they're in the studio with me with no translator. And I'm talking to Cabrera, and he's going, the hit was a good hit. And he keeps looking at this girl's butt that's through the window. It was a hit that was good. Belliard's saying nothing. Nothing. It was the worst. It was the worst interview ever.
That's hilarious.
It should have been golden. A translator, we could have at least just chewed the fat, a little bit.
But, to me, I wish some of those moments had been saved, because I think now you'd listen back going, the awkwardness that was there, it'd be so funny now, though.
There were so funny. And occasionally you get somebody in there like a Carrot Top or something like that, and you just lose control. You just have to it's just an unmanned fire hose of a guest. And there's nothing you can do.
You can't get it back.
You can't get it back. It's just, I'll just go over here like Dr. B. I'll just go over here and sit and watch the rubber ball fly around the room. And there's something to be said for that. It's its own moment,
Yeah.
But yeah, it's my buddy Richard Wenham over at NPR at 88.1. I love listening to him. We have almost identical musical taste. But he is a great user of judicious silence with those long pauses. Mm-hmm. So whenever we're on together, I'm sitting there anxiously vibrating, trying not to step on him and his show, trying to fill in dead air, and he's just moving languidly with that beautiful British accent. I'm sure we're an odd couple. I'm sure on the air.
But it is awkward. And I'll tell you something that's even it's not even near the same, but I think it's actually worse are these videos. And I love the video component because it adds I can see your body language, I can see your expressions. But if you have a bad internet connection, or if you get someone who has awkward cadence, in other words, they talk differently, they don't say their phone number, da 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 da. They do it awkwardly. Then you're stepping all over them on videos. I've done several in the last few weeks where I've got finished and I was tired. I was like, oh my God, I couldn't do that right if you paid me more money.
You wanna have some fun with stereotypes?
No.
You
Yes.
sure?
Yeah, why
Well,
not?
I just think certain accents are much easier to understand. Put yourself in the position of somebody who's hard of hearing. That's become an issue now. You see people with the masks. Their masks say, "I can't hear you," which is weird because you're looking at their mouth and it's referring to their ears. Their masks say, "I can't hear you," because they're hard of hearing.
Yeah.
They can't read your lips. And certain accents are like that too. And I think that the subcontinent Indian accent, when the one that we're so used to hearing on the phone, um, it's very difficult if you cannot see their lips moving.
Mm-hmm.
And I know some people who have very hardcore Southern country accents. If you're talking to them face to face, everything's okay. But sometimes, I mean, they're kind of muffled and they run their words together, and you're having a hard time hearing them when they're just on the air. And so, when it comes to a phone conversation, I will sometimes be looking at my coworkers, and we're hearing the voice, but none of us are really picking up on what's being said. And you're right, when the video element is there, if you can see their lips, if there's a good connection,
It's better.
it's all of a sudden it's magic again. So there's something to be said for some of the new media, I guess.
I'm going to start making clips though of people who do talk in awkward cadence, because there are people who like to say things really fast and they think about things. And when they do that pause right there, I go, oh, that's my cue to say something. Yeah. Meanwhile,
or they pause to get their thoughts, and then you jump in and change the subject, and they never get their thought out, and so they leave pissed off, and they never.
And
come
I'm
back
the
on.
worst at that. That's why I could never do what you do.
You're the worst interviewer ever.
I am. I will never celebrate 28 years of shit.
No, I'm saying that's the way they come away. But I'm not saying you are.
You are. It's okay though. I don't mind it. You still feel pity for me and come on with me. Hey, so let's ask you this: talk radio, the format. You have transitioned over. You're still on talk radio on Nuga Radio, of course, every day. But you're also doing the podcast now that you've kind of hit your stride on the storytelling part of it. Do you see the connection of the talk radio and the podcast, or not so much?
Yeah. I've been doing it now. I mean, I was doing the podcast before I went back on, and my podcasts have settled into Storyville and the Rockyology, the music thing. And we have done those now for 21 straight weeks. 21
Wow.
straight weeks. Yeah, we literally started. I'm not really sure why we got going on such a singular path, but we decided we're going to do one a week. And that's when the pandemic hit. And like everybody else said, well, maybe we ought to just wait. And everybody went, no. Now's the time to do it. Now people really need it. And so we haven't missed a week yet. And it's just become like clockwork. And like today's Storyville, I think it was like 18 minutes long. And we talked exactly about what we're talking about right now. I basically just walked in and said thank you to the people that responded on Facebook, and talked a little bit just about the nature of the business, and made one other kind of connection that just through a thing that happened in the media this week. I'll touch on that briefly right before we get done. But yeah, it does. It makes perfect sense. They nestle up against each other very well. And the Rockyology thing, the music thing, gives me something to look forward to that's not just topic driven. And let's face it, topic driven since March has been pretty much a downer.
Yeah.
So it gives me an escape, and escapism is something that all of us are looking for right now. So yeah, it makes sense, and it's a nice platform. We've had about 29,000 hits, I guess.
Wow. That's
Not
really
bad.
good. And then they can find that at Fred. Is it Fred Podcast? And how do they find
Fred,
it?
just like Fred the Show, free radio every day, fredpodcast.com. They're all archived. And actually, the music show airs on Nuga Radio Friday nights at 6. They actually do an hour worth of music, kicking off the weekend from 6 to 7. Just purely, but it's a good show. I'm not going to sit there and beat around the bush. It really is. Not me, it's the music. And it's just deeper rock cuts and kind of hidden treasures
So
in the
has it
rock
got your
world.
commentary though? Are
Yeah,
you
I mean,
okay?
I kind of just curated. I DJ an hour's worth of really good music that I think anybody out there who likes rock and roll would enjoy. Some stuff they probably haven't heard or hadn't heard in a long time from artists they'd be familiar with or would like. And then NPR actually plays it on Sunday nights at 9, 88.1. So I've got 2 terrestrial signals. They're going to probably move it to a better time slot. They like it too. And then they're all, archived at fredpodcast.com. And Storyville is just me doing what I always do, just telling stories.
Well, I
And
know
there's
you
no
can
short to
find
those either.
no, and I know you can find those on podcast platforms like Apple and Google.
Yeah,
I've
yeah.
found them myself there. Um,
Anchor, I go to Anchor for whatever reason. I guess it's the first one I went to. I'm used to it. So that's the one I go to.
My last official question before we kind of wrap it up, and there's other stuff you may want to say. Are there interviews that you wanted to get and you couldn't? Are there people you would like to have talked to, or you would like to talk to now that you've just not had the chance? Or pretty much, if you've wanted to, you've tried.
Yeah, I mean, I would have loved to have been able to talk to Jack Lupton. I don't know that it would have been that good an interview. To be honest with you, I would have liked to have been able to do it. I guess Ruth Holmberg. I think that would have been a good interview. She just didn't want to do it here locally. Um, oh man, if I could have gone nationally, I think really that's easy. Billy Graham or Johnny Cash. Those would have been my absolute, just no doubt about it. That's my ideal dinner table. If I could sit there and just pick somebody's
Wait a
brain.
minute. Jeff
Yeah,
Styles, Billy Graham, and Johnny Cash.
yeah, I think that would be one heck of a good conversation. And I actually, I really did want to interview Luther, and I did get a chance to get him on the air. It was a very short conversation that lives in infamy. I won't retell that story here. Probably wouldn't make some people very happy, but it's a funny story. But he was an old school guy, and he didn't want to. He was going to be on the air as long as he was alive.
Oh yeah.
And as long as he was on the air, he didn't want to turn his back on his employer and go to the enemy. It was that simple. As long as he was being employed by somebody, he didn't want to go to the competition. And something we talked about all the time. And finally, one day, I got him across from me. And like I said, it was short. It was a short.
You know what? That might be for a good Fred. That might be for a good Storyville.
It doesn't take long to tell, but it was funny. It was funny. He wasn't happy. It was a surprise to him. All the rest of us knew what was happening, but it was a surprise to him.
You'd mentioned that some stuff had happened this week in the media that you were going to touch on before we left. And yeah,
it kind of just puts the time into perspective. I mean, 28 years. Look at all that stuff I ran through, and to some of it, it just seems like it was yesterday. And some of this week seems like it was 3 years ago. So time being relative, but in the Parade magazine that comes out in the Sunday paper, the big article in it was, what were we listening to 50 years ago, 1970? For somebody my age, that's no big deal, right? So what were we listening to in 1970? We were listening to the Beatles. We were listening to James Taylor. We were listening to Three Dog Night and Joni Mitchell. It was all music of our life, right? 50 years, 1970. It was baby boomer music then, and very familiar to us. And I started thinking about that 50 years ago. All right, so 1970, that's still this big slice of Americana and slice of time that we're super familiar with. Now, go back to 1970 and take the people that get that Parade magazine in their paper on Sunday and go, what were we listening to back in 1920? Nobody would have any familiarity with that. Nobody would have a touchstone to what was happening in 1920. that there would be any common connection with in 1970. I mean, we used to live in 10-year blocks.
Yep.
I mean, to think about that. And the baby boomers just grabbed 70 and wouldn't let go of it and still hang on to it 50 years later.
It's because this is the best music.
50 years, we just won't let go of it. You know? We own a half a century, damn it. And those people were lucky to squeeze in 8 or 9 good years.
You can
and
take
said,
it
this
from
was our time.
Pride from our cold dead fingers is the
exactly. We got half a century. It's ours.
Well,
I don't know. We're not going to give up anything.
There was a lot of good music and a lot of good stuff happening, but a lot of good memories were made in that 50 years, though, man. There's a bunch of good stuff happened.
And I almost got 30 of it. So there you go.
Well, and I think you'll hit 30, and I appreciate this, man. And I know you said thank you to everybody that responded on the Facebook post, but thank you too. And I've said this 1,000 times. I don't know of anybody on planet Earth that's perfect. Not one person. And I appreciate the fact that you've put yourself out there with all the flaws and all the successes, and you've stuck with it and you've pushed forward, and you've always been committed to doing what you're the best at. And that's what I think is being the voice of not only the daily lives, but the things that we do that hit our lives on the big stage. And I appreciate the fact that you're there for everybody.
Well, thank you, man. I appreciate you, Clint. You're a good man.
Well,
good man. I have been blessed with a ton of really good people that have intersected me in my life, and I loved having friends, and I try to hang on to them as best I can. And that is just, I've been enriched. And Chattanooga's been great to me, and all the folks out there. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Well, everybody looks forward to hearing you tomorrow morning too, because you still, it's not Friday. You still got to work.
God,
I know.
It seemed like Friday there.
I know. Well, hey, and right. I need to tease something real quick. I am somehow, hopefully next week, going to have one of these video conversations with your agent and your manager and handler and your wife about sales. She and I are going to talk business and sales.
Lurleen? All right. No, Rebecca, you will enjoy it very, very much. She is just the wind beneath my wings. You've heard me sing that before many times.
I've not, but that's
an aria right now.
Nope, I'm hanging up. Old school. I'm hanging up this video phone.
Will I ever tell you you're my hero?
Ride, Styles.